last report had one key proposal that's been forgotten, it seems, that all of these things should be moved into a single stop, somewhat like his model was the Fraunhofer Institutes in Germany, but the Swedes have a single operation, Vinnova, the Finns have Tekesh, the Israelis, the Taiwanese. My point is, what is CFI, and what are you going to do to move to a more efficient and likely single entity that does this coordination among all these government programs at the federal, provincial, and municipal level, so that students connect good ideas that they clearly are generating with all the money Canada is spending with the opportunities to move these ideas into people's hands, into the marketplace?
Well, CFI, CFI. CFI is this creature of government that was created in 1997 to fund research infrastructure. We're one program that obviously services the research community, the universities, the research hospitals, and the colleges. So it's a little bit different. Our role, though, one of our mandates, and it's specifically identified in our agreement with the Government of Canada, is to facilitate innovation and commercialization. And we do this through the partnerships that Steve has just talked about, to try to make sure that the instrumentations, the infrastructure, the facilities that are provided act as a catalyst to bring in industry in that sector. But coming back to your fundamental question, the rationalization of the programs, the creation of a ministry and or of a one-stop shop in that concept, I think the idea was endorsed by all the members of the committee that sat on the Jenkins panel. The challenge at this time, I think, from a purely bureaucratic perspective, is that it's not an opportune time to create another administrative structure and another, I would think, another ministry that would obviously create take the Minister of State and the Minister of Industry and bring in a new entity. So that, I think, is a bit of a challenge that the government has got to deal with. We are not, and Chad may have some ideas on this also, because he's been at SSHRC for a little bit longer than I've been at CFI. But in that context, I think it would be very challenging at this stage to launch a new organization. Rationalize the programs, have one-stop shop, try to simplify, I think is something that is badly needed. But I think, I agree that for a young startup firm, to try to find your way into this maze of programs can be challenging. You've heard of a new one today that obviously might be of use to you.
Maybe.
And that's important to address. And that if we don't address this, then I guess we are just adding a barrier to innovation. So.
Okay, we have time for one very short question and a very short answer. And I think there's a gentleman with his hand up back there.
Earlier on, you mentioned that, well, the students should remain in school, wait it out. Why won't the universities be more flexible? They provide us with sabbatical time. Why not provide students with sabbatical time? Let them leave for a month or a year with a guaranteed you can return and finish later on.
Yeah.
And we're making it tough on these young innovators. It becomes a binary, yes or no, not I'll do both.
No, but that I would think that, and I can speak as a former dean, a former vice president, a former president. I'm sure Roseanne can add to that also. There's a lot of flexibility in our system for the students, and we would, the co-op programs are ways that we've addressed part of that in many ways. But we would have no problem. Most universities would have no problem to say to somebody, you can stand out a year and then come back. Obviously, in some of the professions where there is a time constraint of 6 or 7 years, maybe, that may pose a certain challenge. But I would argue that there's a lot of flexibility within the system to address those needs. The challenge is that once they do that, though, many of the students, though, will find that they need to devote all their attention. Look at one of the very successful Canadian companies, RIM, Mike Lazaridis, never in fact completed his degree simply because he was on a co-op term, and his idea was moving so well, and he felt a responsibility to his employees that he had on board, and decided to devote all of his time. But he was given a couple of extensions to his work term and to his program, but then decided to devote all of his time for our greater benefit, in fact, to RIM. But I think there is a lot of flexibility within the system.
Okay, we'll have to stop there, but great discussion. Thank you for those great questions, and a big hand for our panel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gilles. Thank you, Terry, Steve, Dwight. And we're going to move right on into our next session, which is not going to be as long as this session. It's going to be a quick session, but we want to hear from our young Canadian Award winners. So I'll bring them up on the stage, and if you've got questions, send them quickly because we don't have a lot of time with this group. So let me introduce Eric LeGresley, one of the 2012 Manning Young Canadian Award winners, who is a grade 11 student, part of the research team at Simon Fraser University that is developing an algorithm that provides accurate, cost-efficient pre-screening of proposed antivirals. He's also competed for Canada at international gymnastics events, and last year won gold in the senior division at the Canada-wide science fair. He surfs, skis, and plays the saxophone as well. So please welcome Eric LeGresley. I'm doing short versions of these bios, by the way. These are incredible young people who have done a lot in their young lives, and I'm just mentioning the highlights because we're short on time. Next is Kelcie Miller-Anderson. She is an undergraduate student in environmental sciences at the University of Alberta, majoring in land reclamation, and she's another young Canadian Award winner. Her project was aimed at finding an effective solution to remediate tailings ponds, which currently cover 170 square kilometers in Alberta. And she's been the recipient of many awards, including the 2012 Aztec Awards featured student, the winner of Best in Fair at the Calgary Youth Science Fair. She was also featured during SNC-Lavalin Science at the Stampede Parade, and she was one of only 8 students from Canada chosen to participate in an Arctic research trip on board the CCGS Amundsen through the Northwest Passage. And she did all of that while training 15 hours a week as a competitive dancer. Please welcome Kelcie Miller-Anderson. And finally, we have Adelina Corina Cozma, who's a grade 11 student from Richmond Hill, who is investigating the brain spatio-temporal dynamics involved in learning novel language words. And she's a student researcher in the Department of Neurology at the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto, and also the editor of the Canadian Young Scientist Journal, and she's won a number of awards as well, including the Canadian Psychological Association's High School Science Research Award. She was also a presenter at the Gairdner Foundation Annual Awards Gala. Please welcome Adelina. So if you do have a question, get it to us quickly, but I'm going to ask each of them to give a few remarks on what the barriers to innovation are and what the incentives are to innovation for young people in Canada right now. Eric, would you like to go first?
Yeah, so I found when I was young, the major problem was...
Did you say when I was young, like in the past tense?
Younger.
Yeah,
younger.
okay.
The education system, I'm from BC, and I found that it held me back. So it's great for, it's really bad for the standard deviation on either side. So what happens is everyone in the middle, everyone who's doing well but not very well, they do very well in that system. And what happens is on either side, so especially the people that are moving ahead really, really quickly, they're held back to that mean of everyone else. And so all of the innovators, they get held back by this problem. And what needs to happen is there needs to be specific special programs like the Manning Foundation for these young innovators. More of them.
Okay. Adelina, do you want to go next?
I'm a grade 12 student at Bayview Secondary School in Richmond Hill, Ontario. and every single year since grade 7, I've been participating in science fairs. I believe that there are both incentives and barriers to innovation for youth. Many young students have inquisitive minds. I remember as a little girl, one of my favorite words was why, and I think it used to drive my parents crazy. And I'm sure that a lot of other children have also experienced this thirst to satisfy their curiosity. And this curiosity in itself can serve as a great source of motivation to work towards something that is innovative. Just the idea that you're working on something to accomplish what has not been done before in a particular way can feel very rewarding. On a personal level, the incentive to innovation is the opportunity to find your passion at a young age. By integrating this innovation as part of a science fair project, youth can have the opportunity to participate in science fairs, where they can further connect with people who share similar passions and be inspired by them. Most of all, the greatest incentive to innovation is the opportunity to make a difference in people's lives. And this has no age restrictions. Like whether you are a child or an adult, it does not matter. You can still make a significant contribution. One of the greatest barriers to innovation for youth, particularly from the perspective of a student that has been involved in medical laboratory research, is securing yourself, can you hear me? I think I've lost the...
There we go.
No problem. From the perspective...
Oh, we'll get you a microphone. There we go. Thanks, Julie.
So I'm going to talk about one of the barriers that a lot of students that want to get involved in medical laboratory research face, and that is securing themselves a research lab position. As high school students often have to compete with undergraduate students for these research positions. And as a high school student, there may be a bias towards you that you're not as capable as an undergraduate student. And while this may be the case to some extent, as high school students, high school level courses by themselves may not cover all the prerequisite skills that are required in some situations, I firmly believe that high school students are just as capable. For me, working at the Hospital for Sick Children in the departments of neurology and diagnostic imaging, it was a challenge for me to develop my computer and statistics skills in a short period of time at the beginning of grade 11 while I was working there on a co-op placement. But it is a challenge that I overcame with great motivation.
Okay, Kelcie?
Well, I have to say that I guess I have a bit of a different viewpoint now being in first year university. I actually feel that while you're in high school, there's actually more opportunities for you. As a high school student, if you have an idea and you're really persistent about it and you're passionate about it, you can approach a researcher. I mean, you may have to try a few times, but most professors and most researchers, if you approach them with a solid and well thought out idea, they're going to be willing to help you out. They want to help the next group of innovators. And so I never really had problems in high school so much. Like I've worked at the University of Calgary when I lived in Calgary. I always worked there. I've done research aboard the Amundsen. I've done research with the Alberta Research Council. So I never really had issues. But I do find now being in first year university, researchers and professors in a different city or somewhere where you haven't really had experience at that university before, they'd be more inclined to take third and fourth year students. They're not as interested in taking undergrad students who are only in their first year and don't have any experience at that university necessarily. So I do find that the barriers, they're not as much there when you're a high school student because there are always people willing to help. But university, it's a little more, I guess, rigid. You have to go to your classes. You have to take these prerequisites. You have to take these courses. So until you've taken them, there's a lot more barriers, I think.
We had a question come in from Twitter asking